And today I'm going to talk about Java 8's optional. Optional is a new feature in Java 8, and it's trying to solve a issue of a non-point exception, pervasively common in Java code base. So what is such issue? Uh, we can expand from this example. Suppose we have a school report. It is mapping from the student's name to their address, um, and it is put into the hash map. So whenever we trying to retrieve a student record from the map, the returned value might be null. So if this address has three parts: the street number, the street name, and the city name. So if we call any fields on the address, uh, it might potentially throw non-exception if there's no such entry in the map. So let me show you an example here. So the address is a record type, uh, which is a much simplified, concise representation of data. Uh, Starting from Java 17, you see this is just one line. If you are interested to know more, you can check my other video about Java records. So we have this school report map. We're trying to retrieve a record um, from the map without using the Java optional feature. So let me just show you here. So this is the code that to retrieve the data from the school report. If we click debug, we can see David is living in Toronto. But if we uh, want to retrieve someone else, which is not in the uh, data, for example, Tom, um, we're going to receive a non-Java non-point exception. So what can we do in before Java 8? What do we need to do? Usually we do the checking of non-tracking. Basically, uh, if the address is not null, we print out the city name. Otherwise, we say no city is found for Tom. And then we get this. This is a solution, but it's not very satisfactory because any object can throw non-point exception, and it's really hard to uh, manually make sure that the condition check is here without the compiler's help. So what can we do better? So in Java 8, an optional type is introduced. Optional is a container to represent whether there's a date or not. So by doing this, uh, we it is more uh, more readable, and the intention of the code is much more clear. Yeah. So what we are doing here is using the optional code. So optional has a constructor to say of a nullable, the parameter could be null. Then if the parameter is indeed a null, then optional will say it's an empty state. If it's not, it will return the actual value. So in this case, we can actually using the is present to check whether the data is there and print out the result if it's there. So you see for David we do have address, but if this Tom, you will say there's no address, this unknown. The real power of optional is actually coming from its two common used transformations, um, map and uh, flat map. Say in the common, usually in the application, we after we retrieve the data, we are actually trying to do something about the data. For example, here we are trying to uppercase the city name. So in optional has a method to map. It gets the city name and uppercase it to uh, uppercase city. Another very common used method is called flat map. So in this case, it is very similar to map, except the mapper function is also returning an optional case. So in our application, we can say if we get the address, we want to find out where the student, which country the student is living in. We have another city to country map, and it is potentially also returning um, non-case, optional case. Then we can use flat map to train them together. So let's see the example here. So the first example is city uppercase. So if this David, we can find the uppercase Toronto. But if this Tom, because Tom is not in the first in the school report, so you cannot find anything. So it's returned by optional empty. Uh, if we want to find out where the student is living in, we use the flat map. So we get Tom's address where Tom is not anywhere. It is empty. But if it is Mary, we can find its country is United States. So in this talk, we present what's the big issue in Java before Java 8, which is non-point exception, and the solution proposed in Java 8 optional, and it's common used function like of nullable map and flat map. Thank you to watch my video. If you enjoy this, can you click subscribe?